We have an apparent ceasefire in the Middle East. We have Bitcoin's difficulty for mining dropping, which is a good sign for Bitcoin miners. We have increased probability of rate cuts, and Cleanspark reached their summer target for exahash. Now, if you guys were watching Bitcoin over the weekend, you'll see that it dropped to about 98,000 before swiftly recovering, and this recovery was likely due to the mentioned ceasefire between Israel and Iran. One thing that's really interesting about this is the big decrease in hash rate, which basically means a decrease in difficulty for the Bitcoin miners that are still mining. The hash rate dropped 8%, falling to 851 million terahashes from 943 million. And there are some that are attributing this to the Middle East possibly mining Bitcoin. However, as Daniel Batten mentioned, this is more likely due to ERCOT standards. We're getting into the summer, it's heating up, and these Bitcoin miners are being incentivized to curtail some of their power. Now, I'll leave this article down below for you if you want to look over it yourself, but it also mentions rate cuts. Probabilities of rate cuts in future meetings have increased, which is good. And looking at the Fed Watch tool, while it's very unlikely that we get a rate cut in the next meeting, there is something that may sway that, and I'll show you guys that in a second. But going to September, it looks very likely that we're getting our first rate cut there. And going to October, the market expects the most likely scenario to be 2 rate cuts or 1 50 basis point cut, as seen here with this 48% chance. And this is where rates are currently. And jumping over to December, by the end of the year, the market sees the most likely outcome being 2 to even 3 rate cuts. It's very neck and neck here. Upcoming data such as PCE, CPI, PPI, as well as unemployment rate are going to heavily affect these and will probably be the deciding factor on these outcomes. Now, I did want to mention towards the end of the month, we have PCE coming. This is the Fed's preferred gauge of inflation. And in our last read, it was at 2.1%, steadily heading towards the Fed's 2% goal. June 27 is our next read. If this can come down even lower, come down to 2%, or dare I say under 2, this would definitely increase the odds of the Fed cutting rates. We do have one negative, is our last PPI and CPI did tick higher. That could partly be due to the tariffs, but this hasn't yet been reflected in PCE. It could be reflected in our next read. If we tick up, this will decrease the likelihood of rate cuts. But the market will be closely watching this on June 27, and this could sort of be the deciding factor if we get a rate cut in July. We do have some news from Cleanspark today. They mentioned that they reached their 50 exahash target. Now, I'll leave it down below if you want to look over every detail, but we'll read what matters here. As we look to the future, Cleanspark has laid the foundation to achieve 60 exahash and beyond. Cleanspark's digital asset management (DAM) division continues to mature, actively managing the company's self-mined Bitcoin holdings of more than 12,500 as a strategic treasury asset to support growth, doing things such as selling covered calls on them to collect premium rather than diluting shareholders. We haven't seen dilution since November, and here's to not seeing more for quite a while. These activities began generating results in May through active monetization and yield, forming a key element of Cleanspark's non-dilutive growth approach. We're mining Bitcoin efficiently, holding it responsibly, and putting it to work in ways that drive shareholder value. With unmatched scale, non-dilutive growth in motion, and compelling opportunities on the horizon, I've never been more confident in Cleanspark's future or prouder of the team building it. Non-dilutive growth in motion is music to my ears. Now, Cleanspark is seeing a pretty decent day along with most of the Bitcoin miners. Bitcoin is recovering after it's dropped to 98,000, and the Bitcoin miners are doing pretty good this morning. One thing we're working on is sort of a double bottom here. We need to break over the 200 MA. We tried here, failed. We did break above here, but were rejected. This is really what Cleanspark and many of the Bitcoin miners need to do. They need to reclaim the 200 MA. Continue above it for long enough that the 50 flips the 200, and then comes our golden crosses. Keep in mind that the quarter is coming to an end. Bitcoin likely will be somewhere around 110, maybe 100,000 by the end of this quarter. That's my expectation. And that would lead many of these Bitcoin miners, including Cleanspark, to see a profitable quarter and the most revenue they've ever seen in any quarter ever. What really matters more than seeing breaking record revenue is seeing profitable quarter, seeing that the money is being made, not being burned. And many of the people that are confused, why are the Bitcoin miners performing so poorly versus Bitcoin? Some of these Bitcoin miners are only 4 or 5x from their bear market lows, where Bitcoin is maybe 5 to 6x from its lows. A lot of this is due to unprofitability. In the last quarter, many of the Bitcoin miners were burning cash, were unprofitable. When you look at Bitcoin's performance during Q1, that makes sense. Bitcoin started this quarter, Q1 that is, at 98,000 and ended the quarter at 82. The Bitcoin miners took an unrealized loss on their Bitcoin holdings. This quarter is a ton different. In Q2, Bitcoin started at 82,000. We have a couple of days to end the quarter. It could be anywhere from 110, like I said, to maybe 100,000, maybe a little bit lower, but that would be my expectation over the next 5-6 days or so, whatever it is. So it is very unlikely that Bitcoin drops to 83,000. It is very likely that the Bitcoin miners see an unrealized gain on their Bitcoin holdings, which should bring us to seeing a profitable quarter. Not to mention that Bitcoin's price during this quarter, especially in the last month or so, has been hanging around 100,000 or higher. This is a drastically different quarter in terms of Bitcoin price and in terms of profitability for the Bitcoin miners. I do expect to see some Bitcoin miners posting profitability. And while we're here looking at Bitcoin lately, we have been in this descending channel. I want to see a break over 108,000 and a test of this previous high here, this 109. But right now it looks like we're in this descending channel. We need to see this break, otherwise we're heading lower. Before I go, I do want to mention that Bitcoin balance on exchanges continues to drop. It is now at 2.07 million. The Bitcoin on exchanges is continuing to get taken away. And this is something that's going to be a constant as Bitcoin gets through its halvings. There will be less and less Bitcoin introduced into the market. We will continue to see these treasury companies, the MicroStrategies, the Meta Planets, of course the Bitcoin spot ETFs continuing to accumulate overall and taking more and more Bitcoin off of exchanges, one day leading to a supply shock. Maybe not this cycle, but at some point Bitcoin will see a major supply shock where we will literally be fighting for scraps of Bitcoin. Now, how are you feeling about today? Do you expect this tension in the Middle East to build again? Do you expect this ceasefire to cease soon? I don't think we're out of the woods there yet, but this is a sigh of relief here for the market. Seeing the Bitcoin miners going up today, seeing Bitcoin recover relatively quickly, I might add. Keep in mind that we are coming up on PCE. This could change the trajectory of rate cuts. And also keep in mind, we're going to see our Bitcoin mining updates very soon at the beginning of next month. Usually you get these Bitcoin mining updates. It tells you the holdings of these Bitcoin miners, where they sold their Bitcoin at. Some will mention their joules per terahash, mention their plans moving forwards, and all that good stuff. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.